Welcome back, everyone, to Into the Code. My name is Agent Strange, and today I am joined by Julien Eveillé, who's best known working right now at Crytek as a senior level designer, but previously worked at Arcane. He's worked on Dishonored, Deathloop, and Wolfenstein Youngblood. And I wanted to have him come by today and talk about his experiences back then, his thoughts on the industry and just games in general, and also a personal project of his that he's going to be releasing later this year called Threshold. So, Julian,
Hey.
welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first things first, I want to talk to you about your earliest video game memory, or if you can't think of anything like that, what was it that got you into video games?
I think that was um, I think that was Metal Gear Solid 1 actually.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I still hold them like close to my heart. I think first time I played them I think was at my nurse house,
Mm-hmm.
because her daughter had a game on. I recall finishing it. Maybe I was aged like at 6, something like that, 6 years old.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't get much of what was there, but I ended up getting through it all somehow. And yeah, it definitely put a big impression on me. Yeah, it still now defines a lot of how I work on
Mm-hmm.
how I it's a big influence.
Yep.
of my-
Yeah, nothing. You can't beat Metal Gear Solid. That's definitely a lot of people's favorites. And I haven't played the first one, but I played through the ones that were available on Xbox 360 in college. So I played 2, 3, Peace Walker, and then it was just before 5 came out. Then I played Ground Zeroes and The Phantom Pain. So I haven't played 1 and 4. But I do like the rest of the franchise, though.
I didn't even know Peace Walker was on Xbox.
Mm-hmm. It came
Nice.
back later, kind of HD remaster, because it was a PSP game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. Okay, Metal Gear Solid. So
Be careful.
transitioning from. Sorry, go ahead.
You should try. I think Metal Gear Solid 1 on MGS4. Also, maybe. I mean, there are also emulation. You can maybe try that. Not know if but they are really worth the time because they all bring their own stuff. On MGS1 still holds up pretty well, I would say, despite being old, basically, on having kind of old school camera, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the remaster, or no remasters, but the versions that came out quite recently are like reflecting pretty well what was there then. Even though there seems to be some extra bugs, but still worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know some people, a friend of mine who is really into Metal Gear Solid has been introducing people to the franchise because of this recent collection that came out. So it's definitely on my list. I think my only concern with it would be it's kind of like with the first Resident Evil. I tried many times to play it, but I could never get used to the fixed camera angles and the tank controls. So, but I got through Metal Gear 2, so hopefully it wouldn't be too much of a hassle.
No. Actually, the controls are the same as in Metal Gear Solid 2, as far as I remember. I think because yeah, for sure it feels like it's tank, tank control ish, but I think it's not, if I remember correctly, and I think it's more like uh, yeah, it's definitely not Silent Hill, style of
Yeah.
really having to rotate then move. It's quite fluid actually,
Hmm. Yeah.
but yeah, for sure the fixed camera can be a bit of a hassle, especially right now.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of the risk that you take when you go back and you play
yeah,
games that had a different sensibility with
yeah,
regards to design. I experienced that with the first two Fallout games recently.
yes,
I went back and played those for the very first time, and it's like, man, you know, it. I'm used to having a quest marker or
uh-huh.
something, give me directions on where to go. And back then, it was basically a video game version of playing a D&D game.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
waypoints in D&D, so
yeah, a
having to
bit
kind of
like.
retrain.
Have you played the first Baldur's Gates?
No, I played Baldur's Gate 3, which
Okay.
I loved, and I have the remasters or enhanced editions, I think they called them.
Yeah.
They're on my Steam wish list, and they're on my list of things I need to go back and play.
Yeah, yeah. They kind of have that same, that same feel and vibe as the first Fallout, actually.
Hmm.
But they are really great. Actually, I didn't play the last one. I'm still looking forward to it. But yeah,
Hmm.
as long as I'm working on Threshold, I don't have that much time.
Yeah, yeah, no. I'm also struggling with time, just for work and all that good stuff. But yeah,
Adult
that's
life. Yeah.
something. Yeah, that's definitely something I want to get back to. So I want to transition real quick to. So Metal Gear Solid was a big influence on you,
Mm.
still is.
Yeah.
You know, when did you actually start? Getting involved in the industry. Did you start modding, or did you, take
Um,
a college course and then get into the industry after that?
Yeah, that's what I did. I took a college course, what we call that bachelor's in France. I don't know how it's called elsewhere, but yeah, it's a free. Uh, how can you say that? Like it's higher studies, 3 years
Hmm.
more than like the usual say, and it was a game design course, and that's when I started to really, get uh, get into the modding, the mapping, and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, I kind of have a, actually, when I went to the school in which I ended up doing those studies, I wanted to follow the cinema, uh, courses. I wasn't aiming at doing games, even though I loved, games, but yeah, that wasn't my first thing in mind actually,
Hmm.
because I love cinema and that kind of stuff, and just yeah, the school happened to start a formation, like a course about games, so I said like why not, and ended up like that for 3 years, a 3 years period, and
Cool.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like it came out at just the right time then.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, and I recall during my studies, contacting some Kickstarters that I felt like would be interesting, and propose them my like. I recall proposing translation services for translate English games in French,
Hmm.
just to get a first foot somehow in the industry in the industry.
Hmm.
It was nice, and yeah. Sorry to digress a little bit, but I found out just recently that I contacted the guys who made Pathologic.
Oh
which
yeah, Pathologic. Yeah.
which funnily enough is another gigantic reference of mine. I love that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also incidentally that's also on my list to eventually go back and plays
Yeah.
Pathologic 1, and well, I'm not sure if I need to play because I know Pathologic 2 is this kind of it's a sequel, but it's also like a remake of the
Yeah.
first game. It's this weird kind of mishmash of the two.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think it's safe to say that you can start with the 2.
Hmm.
Depends on the level of jankiness that you are ready
Yeah.
to endure.
Yeah. That's what I've heard about the first one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of walking.
Oh yeah. Even in the second one, but like they are so great at bringing high stakes on tension, on
Hmm.
tough decision, on it gets you really involved in everything, and I love that kind of design.
Yep. Oh, cool. So, in college, took some classes that eventually led you to get in the industry from there. When did I assume at this point? I can't remember off the top of my head. The first official arcane game that I think was Dark Messiah, Might and Magic, in 2006, and then there was Dishonored 1.
There have been also Ars Fatalis. I think it was before Dark Messiah.
Oh, Arx Fatalis? Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, then it was Dishonored.
Mm-hmm. And then when did you join?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right.
I arrived in 2015, and it was like a year before the release of Dishonored 2.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time, I worked as a QA. It was really great experience.
Mm-hmm.
Really nice co-workers, and yeah, it was really formative. I don't know if it's correct, but yeah, it was a good teaching of the inner workings of a big AAA, like big, like quotes, big AAA studio.
Yeah.
Because when you're QA, you got to talk to everyone and got to understand what's everyone's jobs involve.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good start to to get going. And like shortly, or I think maybe it was during Dishonored 2 shipping period, I started making clear that I wanted to join a design team.
Mm-hmm.
And the level design team was like the nicest one ever, so felt like that's where I wanted to work.
Yeah.
So I started making maps on my free time. So I stayed at the studio. Back in the day, you could stay in the studio and very, very late, or come very, very early.
Mm-hmm.
And I made maps with the editor. And eventually sent, I don't remember, maybe one or two maps to the leads, saying, okay, we consider this my test, kinda, even if they didn't ask for it. And they eventually took me into a meeting room and said, okay, so here's what's cool about your map. So it took about 5 minutes, saying the pros of the maps. Then they told about the cons, and it took like maybe 40 minutes. There was like so much things that weren't right, but I don't know. They told me something like, we can see that there's potential, and we can see that you are like involved on the you have the will to do the right thing, so we cannot trust you, so we're gonna try it. We're gonna give you the job, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I landed my first job as an LD for Dishonored Death of the Outsider.
Awesome.
But that was a great mark of trust. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a friend who recently he was recently laid off, but
Okay.
he did QA for, I think he said, about 10 years
Okay.
in Montreal, and he said something very similar, that when you're working QA,
Uh-huh.
you get to know pretty much everyone. You kind of
Yeah.
have to, because if it's is it a design issue, is it an audio issue, is it
Yeah.
a graphics issue. So you're going to become familiar with just about everyone in the studio at some point or another.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that you're able to one, find a design team that was really nice and chill,
Uh-huh.
that you could interact with, and just say, hey, you guys didn't ask for this, but just to pass along your way, when you get 5 minutes, hey, maybe look at this. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And then so worked on Death of the Outsider,
Yeah.
then worked a little bit on Young Blood,
Uh-huh.
and then, well, when did you leave? Sorry.
Sorry?
You worked on Young Blood and then Deathloop.
Yeah.
And then when did you actually leave Arcane?
So about, I think, a year after, more than a year actually, after Deathloop's release,
Uh-huh.
I
Okay.
left on, I don't even remember, but like it was like a year ago, basically.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I worked on Blade 2 actually for a while, but I can't say how much. I wrote it on Twitter and it became an issue. so
Yeah.
so I won't say it anymore. But yeah, I worked for a while on it, and yeah, looking forward to see what's left of my work on the game. But
Awesome. Yeah. Hopefully, well, they better make sure that they have your name in the credits then at the
I
end.
hope so.
Yeah.
We'll see. That's always, a tricky topic. Yeah, touchy one. That's really up to the studio, so they do what they want. And yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you pretty much left Arcane and then went to Crytek, which I don't quite remember the history of Crytek. Are they a French studio or developer, or did
No.
they just have a location in France?
They don't have anything in French actually. In France actually, I'm working remote.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
So I didn't leave Julien on. Yeah, as an example, I just came across some former Arcane folks yesterday, and we just had a drink. So we are still very connected to the people. To the video game network of Lyon. But with the perk of not going to Frankfurt, because they're actually in Frankfurt. They are Germans since the beginning. But yeah, the studio for a while has been really remote friendly. It has, it's still something that is doable. But as many companies, they have been a bit, restraining that recently. But yeah, we are like, I'm still in Lyon, and I've got a good friend of mine who was working at Arcane 2 as a lighting artist, who is now a lighting artist at Crytek 2, and he's living 50 meters away from me. So
cool.
So yeah, we are several French working for Crytek.
Cool. That to me personally, I love hearing that, because again, like you mentioned, it just seems that more and more companies are, not just in games or tech, just in general, are doing this whole, okay, you got to come back to the
Mhm.
office, and so that you can go back into stuffy meeting rooms for hours
Yeah.
on end. So that's really cool that you're able to work in a senior level designer. That's not a low position. That's on the upper end.
Okay.
So to be able to do that remotely is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also about trust. I think uh, it's a sane way of dealing with your staff, basically, because if you feel trusted, you'll do. I think you'll do a better work than if you feel like the company is uh, being really wary about what you do and about
Hmm.
you know yeah, trust is important in that in I think every job actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's something that I've personally been experiencing at the place that
Yeah.
I work. I work in accounting, and
Uh-huh.
that has been that's been a big issue lately. Is just trust, but
Remote you? Oh no, the trust in general.
just trust in general.
Yeah.
I drive to where I work,
Okay.
and um, we work face to face,
Hmm.
which is fine, and
Yeah.
it's pretty necessary a lot of times because it just requires a lot of communication,
Yeah.
and it's just easier to do that in person.
Yeah.
But yeah, trust. If you having superiors who trust you to do your job
Hmm.
is a huge weight off
Yeah.
of your back.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
but the reverse of that is also like if you have coworkers who you can't trust, that's a big weight on your shoulders.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we recently had to address that with one person. So,
Oh.
you know, but anyway, so I completely understand.
Yeah.
Um, Working remote and working on what is going to be Crisis 4. So I have
Yes.
played Crisis. Crisis is pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
And Crytek is known for kind of going all out. Remember back when Crisis 1 came out, that became like the new benchmark game of like,
Yes.
can your computer run Crisis?
Yeah. Yeah. It's still a joke.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm sure everyone's really looking forward to seeing what Crisis 4 will look like.
Hmm.
But the main thing that I wanted to talk to you today about is Threshold.
Uh-huh.
What is Threshold?
So yeah, what is threshold? It's I think I can say that it's like a, a very political game
Hmm.
about a topic. I can't say what. Sorry, in detail, like because it's the kind of the twist at that defines the climax of the experience.
Hmm.
But it's like a small game with kind of basic, mechanics. Because you are like doing a job of maintenance on a border station
Hmm.
in a remote place up in the mountains. So you pick your country at the beginning of the game. So there are like about 20, 25 countries right now. So real countries, obviously. Um, and it will change the difficulty and slightly change the ending too
Okay,
uh,
cool.
of the game. So the game is based on stats from the real world as well. That's kind of the idea of the basic pitch, and the goal was to make at first to just was to make a statement. It was meant as a almost like a joke game of a joke in if I may, but it was meant to last 5 minutes just to prove a point on something, and
Hmm.
that's it. And then it felt like it wasn't maybe enough. it felt also like I wanted to, try new things, touch a bit of every part of game making, because when you are doing level design, it's a bit like when you are working in the car video games industry, because like in Lyon, we've got a lot of video game studios that are specialized in car games.
Mm-hmm.
There is like the crew that is made in Lyon right now.
Okay. Yep.
On before that, I don't recall the name, but yeah, there were a lot of games centered around cars. On there was this kind of joke about people who work in those games never get to work on something else than car games. They are cursed to do that for their whole developer lives when they started doing that. And felt a bit like that with level design, because I know that I can bring some interesting stuff on different part of game making, basically. And it feels like in AAA you are often, put into that box, and you can't really step out of it because it would be considered overstepping, and sometimes rightfully so. You can't just take the jobs of others. You are supposed to do yours. That's normal. So yeah, that's something that wasn't possible really at Arcane, like making your own games and especially selling them afterwards. And Crytek allows that as long as it doesn't, impact your performance at Crytek. That seems like a absolutely legit, condition. So yeah, that's that comes from a very sum. It's a sum of different motivations. But I'm glad I'm able to keep up the pace, because most of the time when you have a side project, it ends up in the backlog of a side project that you never finish. But
I've heard that plenty of times. But that's great that you have the flexibility, and that Crytek is cool about it. So long as it doesn't affect your work here, hey, go for it.
And that's also a sign of trust, and that's really great.
Awesome. So there's one game, I haven't played it, but I watched a couple of videos about the game, and it's on the shorter end. Paratopic, have you heard of that?
Yes.
Okay. So when I first saw the trailer for Threshold, I was like, oh, this kind of looks like Paratopic and some other games that are coming out that are kind of going back to this lo-fi, early 3D, graphics style for games. And was that a design choice, or was that, because, hey, I'm dipping my toes into graphics for the first time and it's not necessarily my forte?
Yeah, so there's a bit of everything of what you mentioned. I like that, that mood, that vibe of PSX style games. There's definitely, a practical reason of I don't know how to make, very refined models, and I'm not really interested into it. I don't know, I'm not especially, looking for, hyper realistic experiences. That's not what I prefer. Mood over, pure realism, basically. So that's what I put my effort in. And there's also a very important reason why it has to be kinda low poly. And maybe it's already saying a bit too much about the game, but there's a good reason, technical reason for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, I like this trend in general, where folks are, they're prioritizing the game, the part that you're actually interacting with.
Yeah, the experience.
Yeah, because it's an experience. You need to make sure that you nail the experience.
Mhm.
And if, because everything, the way, how did I explain it once? I explained it to someone once where game development seems to be, I don't work at game development, but it seems like, you've got all of these categories
Mhm.
that you can only max out like 3 of them out of the 5.
Yeah.
And you have to pick and choose out of those 3 which ones you want to prioritize.
Uh-huh.
You can put in some points into all of them, but you can't maximize every single category. So seeing more teams, small teams, whether it's like yourself, like a solo developer, or
Yeah.
if it's like a couple of college buddies or something, saying, "Hey, we want
Gotta
to
make
make
choice.
yes, make that choice," and then say, "We want to make something that is, functional. It plays well,
Uh-huh.
and it's something that we want to play."
Yeah.
And it's not just some glorified, tech demo or, you know, piece of, a pretty painting,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
that's interactive. So that's really
My
cool.
uncle's been killed, hasn't he?
Um, there's
I know
other
he never
Funny
came back
thing,
from
thing.
the meeting with
Okay, yeah, go
sorry.
Campbell.
ahead.
The funny thing is,
I don't
so
believe he
I
expected
just
anything else.
heard about Paratopic because of the reactions from the trailer, because I didn't know about that game. Actually,
Hmm.
I saw it in the bio of Doc, on Twitter. I think you know him.
Zemansky.
No, no, no. I think it's just Doc. He actually worked on Paratopic. He was Doc Squiddy.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
The narrative designer for it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I did not know about that game. I checked it out. I didn't have the time to play it yet, but I intend to do it. Sounds
Yeah.
like an interesting experience.
Yeah. Definitely. Was there anything when making Threshold, like you mentioned earlier, Metal Gear is a big influence on you, Pathologic's a big influence on you?
Yeah.
Are you at liberty to kind of divulge some of the influences that led to Threshold's creation?
It's so yeah. I mean, there's a few influences, but I can't talk about them because it would really say too much.
Hmm.
But Pathologic is definitely one of the main ones because of how basically the game puts a lot of pressure on you.
Hmm.
And that's exactly the same thing in Threshold. Like I wanted to have something a bit stressful, even a lot.
Hmm.
Having many things to manage, on having a constant pressure of death on top of that,
I went through the books this morning and
with
mistakes you've made.
oh, I don't have the word for it. Divergent, objectives on yeah, a sense of doubt on what's going on, what's that place, bringing some cosmic horror things on, basically having a thick mood, a dense mood that feels a bit off and a bit heavy.
Hmm.
So that, yeah, Pathologic is basically that on on it. That's something that I like actually in games, and I feel like it's one of the things that sometimes is a bit frustrating in AAA, is that you have to aim at a really large audience, so you can't really make that much of a bold decision in terms of design on. I mean, you can't really, put your player into too much pressure or too much or giving them too much trade-off situations that are like really nasty. So that's kind of what I wanted to explore basically.
Cool. Yeah, it seems like only a couple of studios or specific developers have an audience that, or they've cultivated an audience where they have an expectation of like, hey, there's going to be something in here that's outlandish or it's going to be difficult, or something like that. Whereas most of the industry, and I've seen this as well, is veering more towards the well-beaten path, the safe course, which is that has its pros and cons. But I appreciate you continuing to trailblaze and say, let's make the player uncomfortable. Let's put them on a timetable and cause some stress. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, we need both, I think. That's definitely not AAA is bad because of that, but I think that's kind of the games that I want, that I would like to see more of, because I never managed to get that much emotionally involved in a game than in those games that you have to make tough choice and you have to. Threshold is not really about tough choice, it's just about sustaining pressure on going through the end. But I like those games with things that matter, on things that you can't just have it all. You have to make choices, and I think it's great. It creates memories, and it creates it tells something a bit more dramatic and meaningful.
Cool. Yeah. So that you kind of answered my next two questions, which is where, things that you liked about working on games and things that you disliked. The big thing that I keep seeing, especially like on places like social media, whether it's Twitter or YouTube, people saying, devs don't know this, they don't know that. They're lazy or whatever. What is, as someone who's worked in the industry and is experienced, what is something that you wish these people, knew about what it takes to work in the industry?
Good question.
Not every family evicted in quarantine actually has the plague. I warned my brothers in every way I could.
How much?
I really did.
Like how much everything is complicated, how much every single thing that can happen in a game must be considered through the prism of not only that can happen, but also that what happens if that doesn't happen. If you can't, can you do it? But what happens if you do it? If you do it with something else? I mean, it's super bad explanation, but like there's so much complexity in every step of making a game that it explains what the need of having big teams to create projects that are like so dense in content or in length.
The entrance is near Holger Square.
It's just a lot of work basically on it feels like people don't get it, but I mean I'm not trying to convince anyone anymore, I don't care. But I'm not that exposed to this kind of people, so that may be why I have not been working on multiplayer games. Maybe I wouldn't have the same opinion.
That now that you mention that does seem to come a lot from people who work like on Call of Duty or Overwatch and things like that. Well, it's good that you're able to shield yourself from that, because it takes, what's the saying? It takes it takes parents to bring a kid into the world, but it takes a tribe to raise it, or a village to raise it, something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, man, if you want to have something to come out working correctly, you know, it's going to take a monumental amount of effort from, you know, however many people there are working on it. And then the more complex systems you have, the more you have to troubleshoot.
Yeah.
And the more people you have, that adds complexity to it as well, because you have to make sure everyone is on the same page.
Yes.
Communication. Because one person might be left out of the loop, and then he or she accidentally messes up something, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
Just the
absolutely.
man I was looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be that simple as that, actually, like you know, submitting a file on the server, and it will break everything. And maybe sometimes hundreds of people won't be able to work for you. You know, sometimes it can be hours. You know, so yeah, even the microscopic grain of sand can be problematic for the whole gears. You know, but. Yeah, that's a complex machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, the last question that I want to ask you before we wrap things up is, it's a little bit controversial, like can be controversial. Let me phrase it that way. Because it depends. It's a personal question, so it requires a personal answer, and each person is their own person. So it's not going to be a universal response. But what is your controversial food opinion? Like, do you like pineapple on pizza, or do you dislike pineapple on pizza? Something like that.
I never tried it. Actually, I should try it just to try. It's a good question. I'm quite vanilla when it comes to food. I hate mushrooms, but you know,
Okay, yeah.
that's not really controversial. That's just sad.
No.
I would love to love them, but I don't.
It's all the texture of mushrooms I don't like. It's just, it
Yeah.
feels like you're chewing on rubber.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're doing something for me first, understand? Someone I don't know who is killing my men, taking my territory, stealing my
But you just say mushrooms.
Yeah.
name of Delphani.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
cool.
about
I
it.
sent my best man to
Oh, cool. Well, thank you so much, Julian, for stopping by and talking to me about, you know, your time in the industry, threshold. Is there an expected, you know, ETA of when we can expect that to come out?
Hopefully before June, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, that's every time I feel like I'm done with the game. I run the playtest with some people, and I found out that something is missing. And there's this thing of the 5 last percent of making a game are like taking like 50% of the time of making a game, basically.
Oh,
That's a kind of a quote from the game industry, and it's really true. If you want to make things right and well, you gotta take the extra amount of effort on that to make it really shine. So yeah, it's gonna take the time it needs, but it's getting close to the finish line, I would say.
cool.
I feel like I'm almost there. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, cool. I'll make sure that the Steam page for it is listed in the description, along with your Twitter.
Thank you.
So that folks can reach out if they want to. But make sure, anyone who's listening to this, make sure go and wishlist. Steam wishlists help developers a lot. So go down, go there and wishlist it as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. Have a great one.
Of course. Yeah, you too. See ya.